Buenos días, buenas tardes, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, and welcome back to another episode of the Making Miami podcast. Before we start today, I want to give a quick shout out to our fantastic producer, Rachel, who's over there. Give a quick hi to the camera.
Yay.
Hey. Today we have a very special guest. He's straight out of West Kendall. He's one of your local elected officials, and he's got the best shoe game in Dade County.
This is a fact.
Let's welcome Commissioner to District 11, Roberto J. Gonzalez. Thank you for coming on the pod, Commissioner.
Thank you, Josie. Really appreciate you having me on the show.
No, it's all my pleasure. So, Commissioner, you're a true product of the grassroots. You were a member of the Republican Executive Committee, something
Yes.
you and I both have in common. You later became secretary of the local party, and you worked your way up through the political world. And before all of that, you were a physical trainer. So what made you first want to get involved, even in those early days of the REC? Talk to us a little bit about that and your journey in politics.
Oh my gosh, dude, that's a long story. Like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to like go?
Of course,
through all
I want
of
it. Yes.
that? Okay.
For the young ones who want to get involved. How'd you get started?
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm so proud of you, and I'm so proud of this show, and I'm so proud of what you're doing, because what you're doing here, giving information to folks so that they can get involved, that's the whole reason why I got involved, right? In politics. But I guess the story starts is I grew up in Miami, right? I'm an immigrant. I was born in Guatemala, came here with my parents, right? My mom cleaned houses for a living. My dad worked in a warehouse, right? And I went to Stirrup Elementary, Ruben Dario Middle School. I went to Ruben the year they beat up a kid so bad his eye came out of his socket. A lot of gangs, right? A lot of violence, and a lot of people doing not so good things, right? And I guess what helped me is I had really good parents, and my parents were really, really, really on top of me. But long story short, I go to Coral Park. I have no idea what I'm going to do once I graduate. The first time I ever talked to a counselor is a week before I graduate. They call me down to the counselor's office. I didn't even know we had a counselor. I show up, talk to the guy. Guy says, "Hey, you're going to graduate. What are you going to do?" "Sir, I have no idea." Army recruiter outside. Talk to the Army recruiter, go through the whole ordeal. I really want to go to the Air Force, right? I end up not going to the Air Force, and I end up staying so I can help my parents. I start working, and I go to Miami-Dade College. In Miami-Dade, I take a class on humanities. You know what humanities is? So I take a humanities course, bro, that really like changed my life. I start learning about all these great leaders, right? From Alexander the Great to George Washington to the founding fathers, back to the Egyptian pharaohs, and I get really, really, really into history. Point is, fast forward, I end up getting a degree in literature and a degree in philosophy. And so I can be a teacher, right? But I decide to become a personal trainer. So I'm working at a gym, and at that gym, it's like anybody who wants to talk about history or politics, it's like, yo, just give them to Rob, right? So I end up training a lot of very successful lawyers, doctors, entrepreneurs in the Miami area and the Gables. I end up training this one guy who's like top 5 lobbyists in Florida, right? And this guy's, maybe in his early 30s, right? I'm in my mid 20s, right? And I'm his personal trainer, like, right? His life is here. My life is here. I'm about to have a kid. He's about to have a kid. And we developed this cool friendship because we're always talking about things that I feel are cool, right? Because I'm a nerd, right? We're always talking about history, philosophy, politics, etc. One day, after a workout, he pulls me aside. He says, "Rob, I want to ask you a question, but I don't want to offend you." And I'm like, "Okay, what's up?" And he says, "Is this what you're going to do with your life?" And I say, "What do you mean? Like, I love my life. I work at a gym." And he goes, "Yeah, you work at a gym. Like, are you going to own the gym? Like, what is the goal, man?" And I said, I have no idea. So he says, "Listen, you're too smart for this, okay? Go to law school. When you get out, I will help you find a job." So that I went home, figured out what an LSAT was, right? Took the LSAT a few months later. He wrote me my only recommendation letter. I get into law school, graduate law school, start my own law firm, right? I understand marketing. Law firm becomes expanding. We become pretty successful. And then I get a call from this guy. And he calls me and he says, "Hey, I just became the chairman of the Miami-Dade Republican Executive Committee. I say, okay, cool. Congratulations. That's awesome. I'm very proud of you, man. That's awesome, right? He goes, I think you should run for a committee seat. I'm like, brother, I just built this law firm. Like, I have so much on my plate right now. Like, I don't think I have time for that right now. And he says, you know what? Life has been very good to you. This country's been very good to you, right? You have to give back. You got to get involved. And at the time, I didn't understand how important that was. But I said, you know what? How am I going to say no to this guy, right? This guy changed my life. So, okay, fine. Run for the committee seat. I become a committeeman. Then I run for the board. I end up on the board. Now I'm on the board, right? A lot of great things happen with the Miami REC. 2020 happens, right? That election happens. I'm very upset because, well, first, the 2016 election happens. And I think the country's going in the right direction, right? Greatest president of all time. Trump comes in. He's just first term, great. 2020 election happens and he loses. And then big U-turn, right? And so at the time, I felt like we could have done so much to get the youth involved, right? At the same time, there's this young guy called Charlie Kirk, and he's out there just, starting an entire movement. But we're not there yet, right? It's like happening. And so I'm like, man, dude, we can do so much with Instagram, with Twitter, with social media, right? Just to get folks involved, right? So I end up leaving the REC. I create my own little group, and I just start trying to inform people on how they should get involved in politics, right? Young people, right? So the demographic is 18 to 35-year-olds, right? And then, first meeting, we had like 20 people there. It wasn't a Republican thing. It wasn't a Democrat thing. It was just a get involved thing, right? By the third meeting, we have like 200 people that just want to learn what local politics is all about. And from there, you can imagine, right? I have state legislators coming in. I have folks on the school board, council people. At the time, Christy Frog, I think, is like on the council. She's not even married yet, right? She's coming and she's talking to these young people. And it just became, super crazy.
Yeah. No, and that's a wonderful and an insane story, right? Because you came from a background that had nothing to do with politics whatsoever.
Nothing.
And you're living proof of the fact that you don't need to have political connections. You don't need to have un padrino que te bautice. All you need is somebody to believe in you, a mentor, like much like the one that you had that gave you a chance and told you, hey, get involved. Somebody to push you, and just your own hard work and your own chutzpah, right? How they put it.
Absolutely. And I think to your point of the mentor, right? You have to. Sometimes you want to get involved, but you don't know how to get involved. So like podcasts like this are great ways for young people to say, I think I can do that.
Yeah.
Right. And so we go back to Charlie Kirk. Here's a young man who said, you know what? I'm going to be unapologetic about my faith. I'm going to debate folks on what I think is right. And you can tell me why you think you're right, but I will debate you on what I think is right. And we can have a debate and an exchange of ideas. And I'm going to try to change the world by just giving my perspective. And you have to understand that at that time, that's revolutionary. Because
he was the first one to do it. And he was 18 when he started TPUSA on his own college campus before he started touring. And
so I could tell you that living that is, you see how the country just shifted into, I think, the Holy Spirit just took control, and you just saw a lot of young people on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, that said, I think I want to get involved. I think I want to give my perspective. I think I want a shot at changing the world. That's what changes the world.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%. And sometimes all it takes is that one moment or that series of small individual moments. You've often talked about how like going to boot camp totally changed the way that your life went. It changed the game for you, the Civil Air Patrol. And that's still going around now today. I wanted to talk about it briefly because it was such an important part of your story when I was doing my research and when I was watching interviews that you had previously done. What exactly do they do, and how is it that what they do is so critical, especially for at-risk youth?
Well, what I could tell you is, back to the point of you need a mentor. Like I said, I had great parents, and so a lot of kids that I grew up with, would even tell me, I wish I had your parents. And at the time, I'd be like, you can have them, right? Because they were so on top of me. And so I end up going to this school where there's a lot of gangs and there's, you know, just people doing wrong things. And so my mom at the time tells me, you got to stop hanging out with these people. And I'm just like, Mom, do whatever I want, right? And so at the time, there was this show called Maury, and you have never heard of that.
No, Maury Povich.
Yes.
Maury.
Okay. So there's a show called Maury, and Maury used to send, you know, kids go to boot camp. So my mom's like, hey, I'm going to send you to boot camp. I was like, Mom, you can't do that because you can't just send people to boot camp. You have to, like, there has to be, you know, an entire process. You got to commit a crime. There's got to be a process. And then you go to boot camp. You can't just decide I'm sending my kid to boot camp. That's just Maury stuff, right? That's just, I tell her that. I get home one day, my bags are packed. She puts me in this program called the Civil War Patrol, which completely changed my life, right? It's like military, it's like a branch of the Air Force for civilians. And she puts me in it. It's Fridays and Saturdays, imagínate, right? Fridays and Saturdays. And you go and you talk to all of these folks about how things that you do in the Air Force. But the first thing they do is they send you to boot camp. And when I go to boot camp, I get really into fitness. I get really into that military-like mentality. I get really into trying to do better. And I have seen, now as a county commissioner, I have visited the boot camp program at the detention center. And I can see how programs like this really change lives, because for me, it had such a huge impact. And that's why I always advocate for mentorship programs, boot camp programs, second chance programs, because I've seen firsthand how these things can change lives. And like, for example, a lot of kids in my neighborhood that didn't have mentors, didn't have programs like that, didn't end up county commissioners or attorneys.
Yeah. The importance of, again, the mentorship of having somebody to steer you on the right path is so essential. And I think that in an industry like ours that's so competitive, it's so important to have people like yourself, people like the person who encouraged you to get involved, people like those at the boot camp who encouraged you to pursue routes that might not have necessarily been the easiest, but that were important to pursue. And I think that speaks not just to your experience and the way that you grew up, but your character as a person. I mean, besides being an elected official, like many people in Miami, and how you mentioned, you're an immigrant, you were born in Guatemala. But outside of that, you're also a family man, you're a father of 2 kids, and you're really passionate about your faith. 3 kids. I'm sorry. Even better, bigger family. What a blessing.
I have a 13-year-old, a 5-year-old, and I have a 1-year-old who turns 1 on September 24th this week.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Congratulations on your newest.
Yeah, best part of life.
But so I wanted to ask, how do all of these things factor into how you legislate, how you approach politics? Does looking at your life through Christianity and fatherhood make you see things in a bigger picture? Absolutely.
I mean, I feel like the best part of life is being a father for me. I think family values are what built this country. And I think Christian morals, the biblical morals, built this nation, right? The idea of looking out for your neighbor, the idea of just basic family values that made this country what it is. I believe that the founding fathers, all of them, believed in a higher power. They all believed in God, right? And I think the biggest mistake that folks make is that they say that, the separation of church and state means that as a Christian, you can't have an opinion in government. That has nothing to do with it, right? The separation of church and state is basically the government will not tell you what religion you can practice. That's what the separation of church and state is. But if you look at how this country was built, how it was founded, if you look at the original Bill of Rights, if you look at the original Constitution, and if you really go into those debates, Christianity is at the forefront of that. This country is first created because folks in Europe could not practice their religion, and they have to come here to be able to practice their form of Christianity. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. I mean, at the root of our nation was that freedom of religion. That's what caused the pilgrims to come over here. And we have it right in our foundational documents. We are endowed by our creators with certain unalienable rights.
Amen.
And that's not to say that you are forced to believe the same thing that I believe or anything like that, but that we all have a certain basic dignity, and that, in a way, ties back to Christianity. As you mentioned, all of our founders believed in a higher power. And I think that you're one of the few local elected officials that really talks about your faith all the time and that lives it out. And I see it even in some of the work you do. You recently, and this is kind of a deviation, but you recently went to visit a school in your district that does some amazing works with the special needs community called Learning Links.
Yes, they're incredible.
They're fantastic. And I wanted, did your faith play a role in influencing your involvement with them, and why give attention to that community? Very few elected officials. I mean, we see Regalado, but Regalado has children that are on the spectrum, right? So she has skin in the game. And then you have Mayor Vince Lago, who's always doing stuff with Crystal Academy, and Commissioners Rene Garcia and Cabrera, back when he was over here, both had interns that had special needs. But besides that, out of all these elected officials, there's not a lot of involvement with that community. What motivated you to work there?
Learning Links is a great school, doing good things. And I think that if you get in a position of power, and maybe it goes to the Christian values, but if you get into a position of power, how much good can you do? And so I go to this school and I take a tour and I talk to these two amazing, amazing women that have started this school. They were teachers before. They both have children that are on the spectrum, and they wanted to do something different. They felt like in certain schools they weren't getting the attention that they needed, and so they start their own school. Right? They start not only teaching kids but preparing kids for the next level. What happens once you graduate? And so what I saw and in speaking with them and just looking in society is that these kids are amazing, talented entrepreneurs. And a lot of people don't give them a shot. And it's kind of like me, right? Or like you, or like anybody in Miami. You don't know what somebody can do until you give them a shot. That's good. So when I saw that they're just trying to teach these kids, help these kids create their own businesses, create their own lines of employment for when they graduate and nobody else is giving them a shot, how can I help do that? How can I help you guys do something good? Does that make sense?
100%.
And so we talked to them in 5 minutes. Hey, you know what? You guys have amazing cookies here. You have amazing coffee. What if, because you go to Barnes & Noble, you get a book, and then, like my wife will take the kids to Barnes & Noble, and then lo and behold, there's a Starbucks there, right? Or there's a coffee shop. And she's always going to get coffee, or she'll get like a brownie or cookie or whatever. And she'll be able to read a book and hang out with the kids and have coffee. And I'm like, man, what if you guys did this in Miami-Dade County libraries? So they end up saying, hey, let's look at some libraries. They're in one of our Kendall libraries, and now they have a whole shop there. And then lo and behold, months later, they end up opening a second business where they're selling candles and all of these amazing products that they create themselves. To me, that was an easy way to do something good. Somebody is telling you, hey, I'm trying to do something good. I'm trying to help these kids. Can you help? Absolutely.
Yeah, and something we forget a lot about the disabled community is the fact that they, at the end of the day, just want to be treated like everybody else. And it's a long
because they are like everybody else.
Exactly. And they have long lives just like the rest of us do, and their lives present unique challenges, and we need to make space and create opportunities like you did for them to be able to have employment, to do things like sell those baked goods that they were so great at making, and supporting them in those ways that cater to their unique needs. So I personally, as the sister of a disabled child, I really thank you so much, because that's type of work that we need to keep seeing in the community.
I didn't know. So your brother is disabled?
Yes, my brother has a condition that's not too common. It's called MECP2 duplication syndrome.
Okay.
And so that presents challenges that are unique, but it only affects boys. It does have a related condition called Rett syndrome. But essentially what it does for him is that it presents challenges in walking. So he walks kind of staggeredly. Okay. He's 12. He still uses Pampers. He can't use the restroom. He's nonverbal. Okay. Things like that. But he is the sweetest boy that you'll ever meet. And so many like him are so sweet, and they just need some proper support. And I think that these initiatives that you prioritize are so incredible. And you've also tackled some really other huge projects. You recently worked on the maternal health fair with the Commission for Women, which I'm the legislative chair of.
Because look, I just had a baby, right? Yeah. I mean, I have 3 beautiful babies, but I have a 1-year-old. And I can tell you that, especially when you're a first-time parent, and if you don't have anybody to talk to, and you don't have anybody to give you any advice, it's very stressing, right? Not only is it really stressing, but the first time you take your child home and they're crying and you're panicking because you're like, how do I help this child? Because I want to help them, but how do I help them? And then luckily, like if you're my wife, you've read thousands of books, and at this point, you're telling the doctor what to do, which is great, even though the doctor doesn't agree sometimes, but sometimes she does. But yeah, but other times when you're a first-time parent or you're a young parent and you have no idea what to do, I felt like you didn't have a lot of resources. So when I saw you guys, you and the Commission for Women come and present, I was like, wait, you guys provide this information? How can we do something like this in my district? And you jumped on it immediately. And thank you so much for doing it.
No, and you jumped on it right away, right? To your credit. We present these recommendations in the hopes that a commissioner will take action. And so you did exactly that. You saw the data, you saw the recommendations, and you felt called to action and you took action. And, as legislative chair, we're actually working on our recommendations for the next presentation in spring with the new data, and we have even more stuff that we want to do with maternal health. So really, I applaud you for that.
And you know what? To that point, right? Both examples, Learning Links and that program, both of them is just, if you find people that are doing good, if you're in a position of power or you're in any position and you can do good, or you meet somebody that's doing good and you can help them, just do it.
Exactly.
That's the point.
Much.
That's the point of life. The point of life is help as many people as you can. And a lot of folks think that it's for you. It's not for you, right?
Or
a lot of people think that it's, I'm sorry, I said it backwards. A lot of people think that it's for everyone else, right? But all of that is beneficial to you. And so when you read the Bible, going back to Christianity, right? The Bible is not there for God. God does not need you to follow the commandments. Okay? God does not need you to read the Bible. God does not need you to do anything. However, if you follow these rules, if you don't kill people, if you love people, if you try to help people, okay? If you don't try to hurt anybody, if you try not to be jealous of people, all of these things that are in the commandments, right? They help you have a better life. Helping others and doing as much good as possible, they help you have a better life. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Ultimately, it's the fruit of the soul, right?
Amen.
So doing these wonderful things for the community, giving back, it's not just something that helps everybody else, and it's not just for the picture on Instagram, right? It's for
not.
you. Those are fruit of the soul, and it feeds your soul and it feeds your mental health. Even if you're not the most spiritual person, giving back will make you a better, happier, more well-rounded person.
And in my opinion, that changes the world.
Yeah.
Right. Do you know who Tupac is?
Of course.
So I always use this quote, but so Tupac, when he was alive, he used to say that I may not change the world, but I will spark the mind of the man or woman who does. What does that mean? So let's go back to Charlie Kirk, right? I'm sorry.
Of course.
I love Charlie Kirk, right? And I think that this guy changed the world. If you saw his memorial last week or this weekend, you see hundreds of thousands of people show up for this person. What did that guy have, right? He was bold and he wanted to help people. That's amazing. And in my opinion, being bold and wanting to help and just wanting to do good, that changes the world. And a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people think that in order to change the world, I need to be a Steve Jobs, or I need to be a Donald Trump, or I need to be this, or I need to be that. All you need to do is try to do good. Help as many people as possible in your own little community, and you will see how you will change the world.
You're the seed.
Amen. Yes. Yes.
So how does all of this for you tie back to the fundamental vision you had when you first went for office, when you got involved, and what you have planned for your district and your vision for Dade County overall? How does all of this tie together?
I feel like it's not hard to do a good job, but you have to want to do a good job. And you have to want to, you have to want to do better. And unfortunately, especially in positions of power, I'm not talking about anybody in particular, just especially in positions of power, there's not a lot of people that want to do good. And there's not a lot of people that want to go against the grain because it's harder. There's not a lot of people that are willing to be disruptors, to be better. Most people just want to go with the current. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And they're not willing to sit down with an organization and say, hey, you guys are doing good. Let's take it to the next level. And so because there's not a lot of people like that, a lot of times I feel like folks things don't change, right?
Yeah.
I think that the more people that are good, that are willing to do the hard work, that are and that have empathy because they've either been through things or they've seen how folks have gone through things and they want to make the world better, the more people we can get in government, in positions of leadership, and in positions of influence, the better.
100%. And I think that a lot of it is finding people that are courageous and that have a high degree of integrity, right? Because it's what you said, not everybody has it in them to go against the grain and to not allow absolute power to corrupt. Absolutely. And also to help others shine. I think that, we're talking off camera, the secret to success is having people around you that are more intelligent than you are. And so you look at my team, I have the best team in Miami-Dade County. Like, ask about me. Go out and go into my district and ask my constituents. Ask people that call my office. I have the best team in Miami-Dade County, the most prepared team in Miami-Dade County. But everybody in my team is somebody that wants to give back. Everybody in my team is somebody that is willing to do 150% every single time because they care. Does that make sense? 100%.
The more people you can get around you that care, the more people that you can get around you that are willing to work hard, the more people that you can get around you that want to change the world, you're unstoppable.
Yeah, and to your credit and to your staff's credit, you do have an amazing staff. In fact, you helped out my neighbor the other day, Mikey Lujan.
Okay.
That you like reposted within like an hour or two. You guys had cleaned up that neighborhood, and it's all about that intention, right? You set that intention at the top, and you're surrounded by amazing people that are with us today. And it's a culture, right, of having amazing people and talent and the humility to understand that sometimes they might be smarter than you, or they might have a better idea than you do, and just putting that to action and working as a team to make something amazing, and taking that into mind. There's a lot that we can do to improve our current situation in Dade County. What are the current steps that you think we need to take to get Miami-Dade County to where it needs to be in your eyes? And how can residents and the youth get more involved in these processes?
I think there's a lot of things we can do. I think that we can put together. I think that in order to change Miami-Dade, what we need more young people like you, and we need more normal, everyday citizens, residents to get involved into the political process. Because a lot of folks believe that their voice doesn't matter. And that is absolutely wrong. A lot of people think we live in a democracy. We do not live in a democracy. We live in something called a constitutional republic. A constitutional republic only works when the people are involved with the government. And so for a very long time, what has happened is you get these people that get into these positions of power. They want you to think that politics is very complicated. And it's not for you. It's not for regular people. And that is so far from the truth. That is so far from the truth. Your voice matters. And there are people like me and like others that not only want to hear from you, but want to amplify your voice. And that's what I try to do with everything I do, from arguing about the budget to working with folks in the community that want to do better, to helping young people like you climb the ladder so that they can have a platform and they can have influence, right? The more voices that we have getting involved, the more people that we have that are part of the political process, the more that you will make the government work for you. And the more good people will get into the game.
100%. And I'm sorry, I keep saying it, but it's just so true. Everything is so accurate. And ultimately, right, it's so much easier than they want to make it seem. If you go and you watch 1 or 2 commission meetings, by the third one, you have it down packed. You know what Jerry is saying at the beginning of the meeting. You know what a first reading item is. And you realize that it's not as complicated as they make it sound, and that it is not just for people like you or for people like me that were nerds about this type of stuff, but for everybody. And it goes to the heart of what you were saying, right? This is a republic. We are a government system that's led by representatives. So if our voice isn't being heard, our representatives can't legislate properly.
Amen.
And so it's so important that we get our representatives to hear us, for people to get involved, for the youth to understand that we are the future and we need to get active. And you have like a huge focus on the future, and I see it when you take on these initiatives like aviation and aerospace. I mean, Homestead Air Base was already designated as a spaceport, and you've introduced a lot of items to improve Miami Executive Airport. What's the plan with that? I mean, what's your long-term goal for all of this, and how does it tie into what you're doing with schools like George T. Baker and the initiatives in Miami-Dade College that you're doing for the youth?
Space technology is the future of humankind. I think that if you talk to anybody who is anybody in defense, in technology, they will tell you that we're never going to leave the information age, but we are slowly transferring into the space age, and the space age is really the future. Everything from drone technology to, for example, the president right now is putting out grants in order to build a Iron Dome like the one that exists in Israel. Mm-hmm. All of these things tie into aerospace and space. So what does that have to do with Miami-Dade County? Did you know that Miami-Dade was a leader in aerospace many, many years ago? There used to be one of the, you would say one of the forefathers of aerospace is Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes used to live in Miami International Airport. This used to be a hub for aerospace technology. And somewhere along the line, we let Atlanta and Alabama take our money, right? They took our lunch money like it wasn't even funny. Why? Because we did not concentrate on not only investing in aerospace, but investing in our people. What do I mean by that? You hear a lot of people say, hey, let's build a new Silicon Valley. Let's bring tech to Miami. Although you've seen people like Francis that have done that, right? It's never going to be a Silicon Valley because we don't have an MIT, okay? We don't have a Stanford. You need to create a pipeline. So I foresee that Miami-Dade County will be a leader in aerospace and space technology because of what's happening in Central Florida with Governor DeSantis, because of what's happening at the national level where they're trying to bring NASA to Central Florida through Ashley Moody and Rick Scott. How do we capitalize on that? By building the talent that is going to build the things that are going to go on these aircraft. Do we need to do space launches in Miami? Absolutely not. We don't need to do that. But here's what we can do. We can get into manufacturing. What does that mean? If you're following tariffs with the president, I don't think that we're going to start making t-shirts and sneakers anytime soon. But what we will do is we will start manufacturing defense. And I have talked to defense companies that want to be in Miami. I've talked to drone companies. I have a drone company in my district. And there's satellite companies that are coming into Miami-Dade that want to be here. Where's that pipeline? There's a school called George T. Baker, which I attended when I was in high school. You can send your kids to this school for free. Miami-Dade Public Schools will pay for your child to go to this school, right? By the time you graduate, so you go in there in 9th grade, graduate in 12th grade, right? And you have an aerospace power plant license, which means that you can fix and manufacture engines and airplanes. The same technology, the same training that you need to work on airplanes is the same training you need to work on spacecraft. And so there are drone manufacturing companies that exist already here that are hiring these kids because there's a huge shortage in the aerospace community for airframe and power plant mechanics. From there, you go into engineering, you go into aerospace and space construction and manufacturing, etc. The way to bring all of these huge companies down to Miami is by showing them that the young people in our community are ready to work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you create the
talent.
If you create the pipeline, the businesses will come. In Miami Executive Airport, I have already brought in George T. Baker in order to do that. The BRITS program, which is a program that works with at-risk youth and gives them that same opportunity so that they can become airframe power plant power plant technicians. and Miami-Dade College, which, get this, Miami-Dade College is working with high schools to not only help with the A&P program, but also piloting. So you can get your pilot's license by the time you're 16, 17 years old. And you can do this with simulators at Miami-Dade College that are in Miami Executive Airport. By positioning all of our youth to take a hold of the aerospace and space industry, we are creating the pipeline of the future to create the next Silicon Valley. On top of that, I've been working very closely with Jeanette Nunez, who is now the president of FIU, and they are beefing up their aerospace engineering. So much so that in October, this next month, we're going to have a space summit so that we can showcase all of the talent that exists in Miami-Dade County. If you build the pipeline of talent, the companies will come and you'll be able to manufacture and create space technology here that will service Central and North Florida.
Really what we're doing, when what you're doing is investing in our youth, investing in our talent, and you're creating almost like this talent infrastructure that then now needs to be supported by this physical infrastructure that we're building with the industry that we're going to attract to South Florida. So I think that's super interesting. And George T. Baker, I remember passing by it when I was younger, and I thought it was so cool, right? Like you could be a teenager and could get your pilot's license. And for a while, it kind of fell to the wayside, and now we're bringing all of this back. And so I think that's amazing. And to support all of this industry that you're trying to help bring in, you've also become a huge proponent of live, work, play, especially for the West Kendall area. So what's the need for the creation of this? What does it look like? Is it mixed use zoning? Is it apartments? How are we encouraging responsible investment into the businesses in that area and some more of that work and play aspect without exacerbating things like traffic?
Well, what I can tell you is that we have a lot of traffic in Miami, right? Miami-Dade's worst enemy is traffic. The reason we have traffic is because, respectfully, we haven't had proper planning. What does that mean? That means that in the past, we've had people that, they live election to election to election, and they haven't made the decisions that are necessary in order to build the infrastructure and in order to create the environment to reduce traffic. So what we have is districts like my district. You can look at Keone McGee's district. You can look at Danielle Cohen Higgins' district. You have certain districts that have a lot of housing. But then you have other districts that have a lot of employment, work, play, entertainment. And so right now in the West and in the South specifically, you have a lot of folks that live there, but they don't work or play there. Now, that's not to say that there's nothing to do, because we have some of the best restaurants in West Kendall, like Vice City Pizza, like Tacos and Tattoos. Mm-hmm. We have some great. You've
got Apocalypse Barbecue.
We got Apocalypse Barbecue. We have Smoke and Dough. We have a lot. We have a lot to offer, but there's no real employment. There's no high-paying jobs out there. And so when you have everybody living on one side of the island and working and playing on the other side of the island, what you create is this environment where everybody's in the car at the same time, going to the same place every single day, and then going back at the same time every single day. If you want to go shopping in West Kendall, it takes you 30 to 40 minutes just to get anywhere near to where you can shop. And that's what creates the traffic. The more balance we can create to that, the more live, work, play that we can create. We already have a lot of live. So if we can bring more entertainment and more jobs, we can set that balance. And I think that a good example is what they did in Hawaii. Hawaii had a very similar issue. So the island had everybody living on one side of the island and everybody working on the other side of the island, kind of like Miami. So what they did is they built a second downtown on the other side of the island in order to create that balance and alleviate that traffic. Now, let me be clear. I don't think that we need 30-story buildings in the South and in the West. I don't think we need that. What we do need is to ignite economic opportunities, job creation, right? For locals, not for people from other places, not for people from New York to say, hey, let me come over here and get a job. But by setting up these schools and these programs and bringing in these industries, you're securing job creation for the next generation, and you're securing where folks can live, work, play in the same area. Does that make sense?
100%. And again, it's this balance, right? So it's what you said. There's not too many, but there's a multitude of housing in this area. And so what ends up happening is that, right? You have
How
all
do you
these
take
people
cars off the
traveling.
road?
How do you take cars off the road?
Right.
You keep things close to them. I live in Westchester. I don't really have to leave much outside of Westchester, right? Because I have restaurants, I have theaters nearby. In West Kendall, you're having the problem that you described, which is that everybody starts in West Kendall in the morning when they wake up, and then they have to go to the
Coral
to the
Gables,
other areas.
Doral,
Exactly.
downtown.
And then all the traffic is going that way, and then everyone's feeling it in the morning, and then we're all dying.
And that goes to public transportation too.
Exactly.
Because how are you going to utilize public transportation if there is no connectivity? What's the great thing about public transportation in places like New York, like Chicago, like Boston, like Spain, that you have nodes? Everywhere that you go, there's connectivity, and you can live, work, play there.
Mm-hmm.
Here, what happens? I have a park and ride on 147th and 8th. I took that bus to downtown. It took 90 minutes. Y eso que they know that I'm a county commissioner, okay? It took 90 minutes. In reality, what you need is that connectivity in order to incentivize folks to take the public transportation. When you have that connectivity with live, work, play, and you create several nodes, right? Several Coral Gables, several Dorals, several downtowns. When you create all of that and you connect them, that's when you can have people really utilize public transportation.
And you make life much more comfortable for everybody involved. So this is awesome.
It's not hard, right?
No, it's not. It's not. It's not when you put some effort into it, some good old elbow grease. So this is awesome, great stuff. What are some of the other things you have coming up in your district? What can residents look forward to?
I think that everybody can look forward to initiatives that we're going to be launching in order to make sure that folks get involved. And so that's why I'm here today. I want to be part of things like this, because I think that the more young people we can inspire to get into the process, the more people like you that can, consider getting into politics or just making a difference in general and getting information out there so that other young people are inspired to get into making a difference. I think that is the key. So we're going to keep not only serving our community, but outreaching and finding the next leaders of tomorrow, right? Trying to work with more mentorship programs, trying to work with all our schools, and creating the best possible Miami-Dade County we can.
And we're so grateful for that. And I'm really so thankful for you being here today, Commissioner. So my last question today is, what is it that keeps you going in an industry that's known for being dirty, that's known for being difficult, mentally and physically challenging? What is it that makes you keep showing up for your community day after day after day?
I originally ran for office because I prayed. And so I prayed about it, and God put it in my heart to figure out how I can serve and make a difference. I don't know what that means in the end, but what I can tell you is that right now what it means is to be the best possible District 11 Commissioner I can, to try to help as many possible people with this position that I have as I can. And so God has put a calling on my life to serve. And God does that sometimes. He does that with a lot of people. And I think the purpose of life is figuring out what God wants for your life. What God wants for my life right now is to try to serve as many people as I can with this position that I have. I don't know what the future will hold, but what I will tell you is that I will do the best I can with what I have right now.
And we look forward to seeing every moment of that, Commissioner.
Amen.
Thank you so much for coming today. I want to thank the community news staff, Rachel, Michael, everybody that's here that helps support this podcast day after day, and all of Commissioner Gonzalez's staff, because you guys help make the dream work. So thank you guys. Thank you for tuning in, and thanks for listening. Goodbye.